Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Be Live with the Big Fella and Three Blokes, a Ball and Bod. However, as ever this week, we were going to have three people, but we've got the two of us, and there's a good reason behind this. And it's not three blokes of all. In fact, tonight we have our first of all we have our mini ball, still waiting to drink a big ball, and we have Bod. Look at that Mohican, how it's coming on. And next week he's due for a 6-week trim. So he sent to his very, very best. And he's become a bit of an internet sensation now with people watching this just to see the 10 seconds of Bod. So I've been told he has to have more airtime. So, and when is my beard going to go blue to match Bod's Mohican? Well, what we'll do is we'll do mine blue for the 12th, which will be the European Champions Cup final when Leinster are away and Bilbao to beat Racing 92. So, Bod, there you go. You've had your say. You've had your look, brother. Out we go. Good lad. See you soon, mate. He's off now for his little treat. Let me welcome my panellists tonight. Not only is tonight all about all things oval in Wales, so everything to do with Welsh Rugby. For those people who are watching, thanks very much. Pose a question up, Sharamid. Good evening. Welcome to Three Blokes, a Ball and Bod, and everything to do with Welsh Rugby. I hope you, Martin, and the team are well. And yes, all things Welsh Rugby. And so very fitting that we have our first Welsh panellist on. We have our first female panellist on. Please help me give a Three Blokes, a Ball and a Bod welcome to Rhian Noel Phillips from Caerphilly. Rhian, welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for inviting me. And
no
great to be here. Watched you enough times.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we've wanted to have more females on for ages now, so it ties in really, really well. So Rhian is our expert in all things Welsh Rugby. So I've learned an awful lot from her, and I'm sure that this is our second look at the British and Irish Isles Rugby Nations. Obviously, we did Scotland the other week, and Scotland was last week. I think we did Scotland. I lose track of time on here. So we did Scotland, we did Wales, and then we'll do England and Ireland at some point in the future. So what we'll do, and Reverend Colin McConaughey is on.
No.
Isn't it, bloke?
I know I'm not a bloke. No, I'm not.
Well, Colin, look, Colin obviously is one of our panelists. Colin, you're going to be in trouble for that one, mate. But I'll let you and Rhian sort that out. So, welcome, Rhian, and let's get right into it then. So, the first thing we're going to talk about tonight is Welsh Regional Rugby. 15 years on, I think it is now. There's new governance structures and there's a new under-23s system being set up. So, the Welsh Regional Rugby. Tell us about the structures, the new structures coming in. Do you think at 15 years on that it's fit for purpose? Has it achieved its aim? Rhian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we've got to go back before 15 years ago when I was sort of a small child, and my father was a big Welsh Rugby fan. Welsh club rugby was huge. You know, in those days, you'd have teams like Llanelli beating the All Blacks. They beat Australia, beating the Springbok. You know, it was huge. But then as the mining industry started declining in Wales, which, unlike England, is the sort of, you know, rugby's always been a working class game in Wales. And the decline of the mines and decline of jobs meant that gates started falling. And they got to the point where I think there was one sort of big Challenge Cup when there was only 900 people came through the door for a local derby. And so at the time it was decided, 2001, 2002, they had to do something about it. And David Moffat at the time was head of WRU. And he basically invented the Celtic League, and it was sort of pretty disastrous because that first year, I think Edinburgh were the only team that that were under the Welsh teams in the league itself. So from that, initially came 5 professional teams: the Cardiff Blues, the Celtic Warriors, Llanelli Scarlets, Neath and Swansea Ospreys, and the Newport Gwent Dragons. The Celtic Warriors didn't last long. They went into receivership the sort of following year, and there was a bit of a rush around where it was quite embarrassing. Some big players at the time were scrapping around for contracts, and you know, some of the other regions sucked them all up. And the first coaches, Gareth Jenkins, who went on and had pretty disaster, brilliant with the Scarlets. pretty disastrous time as head coach of Wales. You had Mike Ruddock, who had the Dragons, and he had a pretty good time, and he went on to get a Grand Slam with Wales. Lynn Morgan and Lynn Howells were the other two coaches. Lynn Howells being the Celtic Warriors, that didn't last long. Lynn Jones, was the Ospreys. And, of course, Guy Young with the Blues, and his name's cropping up later on with the potential for taking over when Gatland goes back to New Zealand or wherever he goes in the future. Anyway, in the first sort of season, the new system was pretty successful. The Celtic Warriors, although after that the Celtic Warriors were liquidated in 2004. The Ospreys won the league in 2004-05, 2007, and 2010. But they've an European title has sort of eluded them all away. Scarlets got into the Heineken Cup final and did quite well. Have done quite well in Europe, and obviously Pivac has been pretty pivotal with them winning the European Pro 12 last year and doing quite well this year. The Blues have won a European Challenge Cup final over Toulon in 2009, but then they went back into the doldrums. Although at the moment they seem to be back on the ascendancy, bit resurgence. And, I'm a Dragons fan, but what can I say? For them, actually, regional rugby has probably been a pretty major disaster. And at the moment, we're all part of the plan, and we're hoping that the plan will actually sort of come into play next year. But it's been a bit disastrous for us. So I think we're at the stage now where Welsh Rugby needs to move ahead. There are the proposals, the under-23s sort of are going to be regionalised, and there are major changes in the WRU board that's been reduced. So big changes, but everything has to develop. I think the under-23, there are some quite high-profile knockers of it, but I think you can't just stay in one place. You've got to move forward, and Welsh Rugby needs to be moving forward. It needs a pathway. It needs to progress. So I think the important thing is giving the youngsters opportunities to play, because the problem is, the Irish have got their A teams. Scotland are going into the sort of the semi-professional A-team type stuff for next year. So we need those players to be playing, and if they're regionalised and they're given games and they're given their own competition, that means A, we can retain them, but B, they're getting that playing time, which is augurs well. We've been lucky in Wales. We've had senior players that have been playing and continue to play at very high levels, world-class levels for a long time. But we need those younger players coming through. And I personally believe that the under-23 regionalisation is positive. What's going to be less positive, perhaps, is the reduction in the number of semi-professional teams in Wales. And I can see that. Again, one of the big problems of regionalisation was when you lost your local team, or you put two rival teams together. For example, Swansea became the Ospreys. And that, up until then, they've been, sort of healthy competitors against each other. And I think sometimes that can have disbenefits. And what does concern me about losing some of those teams from the sort of Premiership League is people may not, we have a problem in Wales. We have a structural problem in the fact that people don't go to rugby matches. Unlike Ireland, for example, trying to get a big turnout for just a normal match is really difficult. And I don't know, our club rugby is quite strong. Semi-professional rugby is still relatively well supported, and that's where the WRU are going to have to really keep an eye on things, because it could go horribly wrong.
Yeah, I've got I've always got this view that it's about building individuals and building teams up to the next level. You can get them to succeed. So what I dislike about the Scotland, the new version, is the fact that there's no promotion and relegation. I think you've got to have that to keep things, because things change over the years. Like you said yourself, I mean, that's a brilliant backdrop, and that's great knowledge. Thank you on where it came from. And I think club rugby is really good. I mean, I watched was it the Principality Cup final last week? I can't remember. Nan Conway was one team. Weekend. It was a phenomenal game of rugby. Absolutely brilliant game of knockout, final cup rugby. So I think it is. Excuse me. I think it is great around the regions at the club level. But the Premiership currently going from 16 to the year after next down to 12, and then they are talking about the 12th place team potentially on a playoff. Yeah. Why not? I mean, why are you talking about it? Just bloody do it. I mean, it's the same with the whole Six Nations thing. Should have a second tier. It brings teams on. If you've got nothing to aspire to, and you you get a team in the next 5 or 10 years who are constantly at the top of just below the Premiership, how are they ever going to be able to break through? So, how do you think that would be accepted in Wales as part of the restructuring? Because that doesn't work for me.
No, and I think as well, there's an opportunity here for perhaps BBC to pick these matches up, because they're losing the rights to the Pro 14. Why not pick up this sort of game? But I totally agree with you, and I think it's the same with European rugby. You've got, in order to encourage some of these teams and sides and clubs to aspire to greatness, you've got to give them the opportunity to get up there, because otherwise you're just hitting glass ceilings all the time, aren't you? You're getting to the top. And yes, if the number 12 gets to play the top one, that's great. But what happens then? You're just in a circle, aren't you? You're just playing on a league and never get anywhere. So yeah, I would totally agree with you there. You have to give people aspiration, don't you? They have it in football, so I can't see why they don't have it in rugby.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's the way to go. I'm just going to throw up there a message of support from another of our panelists, Ben Slater. Great to see you on the screen, Rihanna. On yourself, girl. from our Ulster man currently living in Scotland. Cool, good man, Ben. Good, hope you well. The under-23s thing, I understand why they're doing it, because it's almost a feeder system and a development thing from what I'm understanding. But the British and Irish Cup is going next year, so they're not going to be there. So they're going to be scrapping around potentially for the under-23s to play enough games. Is it ill-judged, the timing of that, with the British and Irish Cup going? Or is it judged really well? Because that's going, so that then leaves what do the Irish A's play, and the new system in Scotland. That to me, that almost offers a new opportunity for these guys, younger people, to actually play. And they're talking about playing them in 2 tranches, aren't they? Pre-Six Nations, post-Six Nations, so that any of these under-23s could be picked up by the international side for Six Nations. Anyway, that's
so...
I give them an opportunity to get more limelight ordinarily than they might not be able to. And you've raised a very good point. Actually, I'm not sure what Leinster A and the provincial A teams are going to be doing. So the academy teams really next year without that, because that was the mainstay really of our season. So we need to have a look at that. But so 15 years on, and with the changes, when excuse me, I pose the question. Has it been successful 15 years on? That's quite a long time. And so the next thing that brought to mind was lack of success of Welsh regions in Europe. So in the Champions Cup for Challenge Cup, for example, we've had Cardiff. Cardiff won it. When I've got the thrown up here somewhere. Cardiff did win it. In 2009, 2010, they beat Toulon, actually. Yeah. And, well, there you go.
I remember that well. Yeah, we all...
2021. And Pontypridd lost to Sale back in 2001, 2002 by the narrowest of margins there. And But that's been the only stuff in the Challenge Cup. And in the European Champions Cup, Heineken Cup, whichever variant it was, the only time, apart from Cardiff Arms Park being used and the Millennium Stadium being used for the finals, Cardiff lost to Toulouse back in 95-96. So it's hardly a resounding success from a European perspective. And therefore, I mean, I know that in the Celtic League, Pro 12, Pro 14, as is, now there have been more success. But overall, has it worked for you?
Yeah, far from Europe, perhaps not, but you could always argue we had 3 Grand Slams and championship in that time, so obviously something worked. But yeah, Europe has been elusive for the Welsh regions, and I admit that. It's looking a bit more sort of positive at the moment with Cardiff, and sort of Celtic are there. Sorry, I should call them Scarlets. I keep going back to that because as part of the regions, obviously they were one of the only. Them and Cardiff were the only standalones, and Celtic sort of ploughed their own furrow on that. But so the Scarlets have been good. Dragons as well. I don't think we've ever been. But one day, next year.
I heard Ben Jackman say that Dragons will be in Europe next year if there's a war. That's why. That's why I'm going for that. Nobody else can speak to me ever again now.
Come on, I'm a Dragons fan. I've been through it all, and it's. But in fact, this has probably been our worst season ever. But we got some exciting people, exciting times ahead, and I think it's like the Welsh Rugby Union's plans for the regions. It's a pathway, and we have to stick with the plan. This time next year, I'll come back on here and we'll discuss Dragons in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a very, very interesting point you raised just going back slightly there on the success over that 15-year period that the Welsh national team had. Well, it doesn't seem to have. Normally, you can see it where it's been building, like so for Ireland, you can see it where it's been building over the year period up to the success you've got now. Although many would say it's down to the individual coach, more so from a St. Joe Schmidt point of view. But give Gatland Ballers due. Not my favourite coach, everybody knows that. But the regions haven't transposed, and yet when they've come together as a team, they've had tremendous success in that 15-year period.
Absolutely,
what do you think that is?
And that's it, isn't it? It's but we're very slow burners, Wales. We always start the European sort of tranche abysmally, and then we're always playing catch up after that. And you sort of look at the Ospreys over the last year. They were right on the bottom. I think they win about 3 games. Changed their coach, and now they're sort of 7th, so and climbing, and still have an outside chance of qualifying this year. So they are traditionally we're bad starters, and I try to avoid watching some of the regional games in the early days because I know they're going to be bad, and I don't know why. I don't know why. Yeah. For such bad starters on their European tours. I
have to say, Scarlets have been one of the most exciting teams I've had the pleasure to watch in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
really,
and they've got it, and I think that's why to me Pivak would be brilliant as Gatland's next sort of coach, because the way the Scarlets play is the way that Wales would naturally play. If I get all coached out with them. But, the Welsh team have always had a lot of flair, and that's what I love about the way the Scarlets play. They always want to, sort of play running rugby, and the couple of matches where, it was the Welsh team was practically the Scarlets team. You saw the way that Wales should be playing, because that's the way they play really well.
Yeah, and again, I go back to the cup final, the club cup final at the weekend, and that the play there was absolutely phenomenal, I thought, and indicative of the same sort of thing that you would see in Scarlets. A fantastic game. So it is there, and maybe it's like you say, it's just well, I mean, he started sort of 10 of Scarlets, didn't he, at the opening game of the season. in the Six Nations. So it's definitely there. And actually, I have to genuinely say, I love it watching exciting teams. And had it not been for my beloved Leinster, going on our fourth star, clearly, I would have wanted, because of the number of people, a Scarlet. Sometimes you get a team of people together for a couple of years, and it comes to a crescendo. And I think Scarlets had it this year. And had they not played Leinster, I'd like to have seen those win it for the people who are losing, because I think what they had together, you can identify as a massive team together. But look, it's the way it is. In fact, Ben, before I go on to the new 60 cap rule, Ben Slater, the great Welsh rugby question: who was better fly half? Who was the better fly half? Phil Bennett or Barry John? Here we go. Here's one for you.
Oh, that era was just so fab, wasn't it? It's that whole. Personally, Phil Bennett would have been for me. I think basically because I was brought up with, my father was a big Bennett fan and whatever. But in the days when I can remember my dad going off. My mother used to get so irritated because Dad would go off with all his mates up to Scotland and sort of over to Ireland and whatever on the grand tours and off to Cardiff every other week. And to them, winning was just part and parcel of going to the games. In the 70s, Wales were absolutely phenomenal, and it was those are the big names, weren't they? But I was sort of grew up with those. Fantastic, and I'd like to think we get back there one day.
Yeah, absolutely. Instantly, Martin Buggy from the excellent Irish Rugby Banter site. Our good friend Martin, how are you, buddy? As an outsider looking in, growing up, I saw far more rugby on TV from Wales than in Ireland. I think before the amalgamation of clubs into the regions, there were some seriously strong clubs. Yeah, interesting. I mean, you go back Pontypridd,
and I know Martin used to watch the Ponty boys, and then they were phenomenal. But again, Pontypridd was the big mining area, and those guys, people like Gareth Edwards' era, those guys were hewn from the mines. They all had dads, so it was a way of getting out of the mines in a way. If you went and played rugby, at least you didn't have to go down the pits, So it was a total different ethos, and I passed Sardis Road on a Saturday now, and there's still a huge loyal fan base in Pontypridd, who go to the matches, and yes, it was that, and the Steelmen, the Ebbw Vale, that was another one. Pontypool Front Row, these clubs were phenomenal.
But it's a shame that it's all situated, sort of south and east, if you like. There's nothing. It's a bit like something. There's nothing sort of north of that mid gap, and
historically,
almost two halves of two nations within a nation, isn't it? But it's still there's being enough of grassroots.
They went to league. You see, the North Wales were league and football.
Yeah, get that. Yeah,
and nobody talked to them. But that's where the Scarlets get so much support. You see, because Scarlets are seen as the rest of Wales. So you've got the South Wales conurbations, you've got the Dragons, Cardiff, the Blues, then Ospreys, and then you've got Scarlets, who are the rest of Wales. There is work being done up in North Wales to try and, sort of develop rugby up there. But it is the one thing we have in Wales. We're in a tiny country, but trying to get from north to south through Wales is impossible. The road system is bad, so coming down to Cardiff to train or to play is hard, it's not easy. And yet there's some really phenomenally good rugby clubs, the smaller rugby clubs up in North Wales. Mid Wales is another one. But we've got a bloody awful infrastructure. Am I allowed to swear? I just have, so it doesn't matter. Sorry.
Well, yeah. It's the whole grassroots thing, though. I mean, if it was me, if I was the WRU, where the league and football were more north, I'd be trying to still push it a little bit more. But again, it's exactly the same in Scotland. In fact, anybody would think that everybody watching this has been pre-prepped with questions. Ben, thank you again. We talked in the Scottish podcast last week about Scotland falling out of love with the Lions due to lack of representation. The Welsh are well represented, sometimes controversially. We won't get into Gatland Ball. We're giving him the night off tonight. He's done well, the fella. But presumably there is a big Lions following in Wales. Good question. Don't know. Is there big Lions following?
Yes. Yeah. Extremely popular. Still very. And you could argue perhaps because we're overrepresented. Of course, I don't think we're overrepresented, and I think the players were there on merit. There were reasons why there were a lot of Welsh people in. If you've got a Welsh coach who knows the guys inside out and has played with them day in, day out, trained them, managed them, then you're going to go for those guys, aren't you? Because you know that your nucleus is going to be a team that you can put out and they'll come up with the results. So yes, I am extremely popular. I know. What are you laughing at?
I'm listening to you, and it's absolutely fantastic. And my brother from another mother who lives in Cardiff, David Williams. There you go. If I don't, Williams, not Williams. Well, it could be from the same person. As I said, I'm a North Walian of sort because I spent up until I was 19. A lot of my time was in Birkenhead on the Whittle. Jeez, okay, there you go. You mentioned now, Dave, so you can't complain. I'll tell you what I do want to give a quick shout out to. Like we did, on the panel, we've got a guy called John Anderson who runs a fantastic Scottish Rugby forum, and John will be joining us in the future. And oh, that's not me. Hang on.
Not me either. Oh, disco!
Somebody's ringing somewhere. I'm not quite sure where that's coming from.
Flashy lights. Can I give a shout out to Rugby Chat and Banter while we're here? Then?
Here we go. It's gone now. Whatever that was. Thanks very much for whoever hacked our call with a bit of nice music. The shout out I wanted to give was to a guy called Robert Rees. Right? Rob is on Facebook and he runs Cycle Rob's Rugby, which is all about everything with Welsh Rugby. And he very kindly shares our links for Three Blokes, a Ball and podcast broadcast every single week. So Rob, big shout out to you and the team. For everybody who wants to follow a little bit of Welsh Rugby, there's a Facebook group there, Rob's Rugby. That will stay on, obviously, so you can watch that again. But Rob, big shout out to you and the team at Rob's Rugby on the Facebook group. All things Welsh Rugby. Get on there and give the boys a bit of support. For me, joining some of the other forums, the Scottish and the English ones and the Welsh ones, is bringing my knowledge up, and that's why we've got Rhian on tonight. So it's all about just look at a little bit slightly wider. So Rob, big shout out to you and the team, and there you go. Right, internationals, the new rule on the 60 cap rule. I'm not sure most people will understand what's happening there. There's always this discussion about players playing abroad. Ireland have it and England have it. But the Welsh have come up with an interesting concept. Do you want to talk us through the 60 cap rule, Rhian?
Yeah. But it's like a 60 cap rule. If you have 60 caps, you can actually play outside Wales and still play for Wales. But there are caveats, because if you played before the rule came in and you haven't had 60, you can still play. It's not me. I don't
know what it is, but I'm going to close down all of my... There we go. I've got no notes now. So sorry. There you go. The 60 cap rule.
Yeah. 60 caps. It's 60 caps as long as you've... You were sort of, you had 60 caps. If you didn't have 60 caps before they announced it, it's okay. But if you haven't had 60 caps and you've just signed up for another team outside Wales now, you could be in Stum. So, but this takes over from Gatland's law, which was even more complicated. So it's supposed to keep the Wales Test players at home. It can act as a disincentive in a way, because if you're like Sam Warburton, you've already done 60 caps, you could theoretically, if someone offers you enough money, go off knowing that you can still play for Wales in the future because you've got your 60 caps. So it's one of those things that most of the players is, with the players like Dan Bigger, he's okay. But Rhys Webb, arguably one of the best scrum halves in Europe. Oh, I hear this stuff, the hoots of derision from some. But, he might not be around for the next World Cup because he won't get the 60 caps. I think it was invented by Australia, wasn't it, for the 2015 World Cup? And we get to see how it plays out. But I think, I'm all for homegrown talent and keeping it, for Wales. But then we're a very small country. We're a limited base, and the rugby player's career is very short, isn't it?
We have this discussion in Ireland all the time. There's that, the whole Simon Zebo affair. I mean, there's nothing written down, but it's just one of those unwritten type rules that we want to keep the talent in Ireland. It's a good mix for the provincial side as well. And so I suppose that's what they're trying to do. I think something will change over the next 2 years. So I think this is a bit of a lead-in. But 60 caps is quite a lot to set the bar at, for me personally. And
what it'll do is, I suppose, it'll dissuade the younger. We've been talking about the under-23s now, the new regime there. It may dissuade them from going abroad, Yeah. And as we mentioned earlier, we have a lot of senior players in Wales who will, been playing for a long time. So yes, the 60 caps, they're over. They're safe anyway. They'll be there for the 2019. But I think this rule is for post 2019 when we're going to lose a lot of players, and hopefully keep some of the younger ones, in Wales.
Yeah, okay. No, I get that. I suppose it's like anything, isn't it? You want, you quite rightly say, a player's career is very, very, very short-lived. Bloody hell, I heard today Eli Walker, who I think was a phenomenal winger, retiring at 25 because of back injuries. I mean, that's a real shame because he was class act. But it just goes to show how short it can be. So I understand what they're doing, but you know what? I wouldn't begrudge anybody going to take a small payday because you don't know what's going to happen to them. No, we have a couple of points, Reece. We've got a question for you. In fact, we're going back slightly one now from Ben, but I will take it. Ryan, do you see the role of the rugby club as an important community hub or as a vehicle to develop players towards the regions and the national team? Or is that a mixture of both?
I think it's a mixture of both. I'm a member of our local club here in Machen, and it's a small club. It's great crack. They do. They are in a village which used to have 4 or 5 pubs. They're now the only bar that's left, and they sort of diversified to encompass community stuff. They do all sorts of things, and people are just encouraged. They do free membership basically. And you can get obviously you go into the ballot for tickets for internationals, which I think is great because you're supporting them, the community supports them. You've got any players which are showing particular talent can then we've got the scouts around. They're feeders for both the Dragons, poor buggers, and the Blues. So people can be picked up, talent picked up, so I think they're really important. And those smaller clubs that are the backbone of any country, isn't it? It's not just Wales. It's those clubs that where all the mums go out every Saturday and go to training on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, or dads. I know Martin's listening, and there's people like him who make it. They give up their time, they develop the kids, they train them, they drive around the country, taking them off to competitions and things, and. I think, all of those kids hope at the end of the day that they're going to make it to their respective international teams, and good on them. If those little clubs, if we lose that sort of the hub communities, the families, and those small clubs, then I think that is the death knell for rugby in any country.
Absolutely. And, well, Colin, I'm going to come back to you on a question later. I'll stick it up now, just so while Ireland selection on home-based players, I'm assuming that should be only has caused controversy. Are the Welsh regions hampered by the increase in players leaving for the provinces to England and France? Can I come back to that, because we're going to talk right at the very end about Welsh players from the regions in and out. But Colin, if I don't bring it up, stick a quick question up there and remind me. Martin Buggy, the two greatest Lions teams of New Zealand and South Africa in the early 70s were packed full of amazing Welsh players. I think more than anything, they created the enduring love Welsh supporters have for the Lions.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we're going back to those teams in the 70s. They were icons. Well, they still are. Yeah. We have in the middle of one of our shopping centres in Cardiff, Gareth Edwards' big statue in the middle of it. It's you have to walk past him when you're going to Boots, and it's part of the psyche, and that. I think that made rugby part of our psyche, was those, and we're still, and yes, we embrace the Lions because of that, and it's legends, isn't it? It's legends from all the countries, all the home nations. They're having that those huge players, William McBride, and it's just, it's icons. And
you're absolutely right. I mean, I suppose if you asked most people what was the greatest try of all time, who are they going to say? It's got to be the
Gareth Edwards.
Gareth Edwards one, isn't it, for the Barbars? I mean, the whole one, but class. Yeah. The days of JJ Williams, JPR Williams, all of those. That was just for me. That was a different world. And I think in the last couple of years they got Wales got close to that. But just not quite enough, and all those internationals and lines,
they're never meeting the expectation, and probably never are not reaching their potential. When you look I agree. On paper, some of the teams, they should be off into the stratosphere, and I think something's holding them back, and it's they play. If you looked at the beginning of the Six Nations, I was sort of thinking Cruz would be mid-table, to be honest, at the beginning of the Six Nations this year. And we ended up second to Ireland, so they do still have that sort of talent to be able to come out and do something that is well hit above their level then.
On that, the next Welsh coach. Okay, I've seen reports saying that Dai Young, Wayne Pivetch. I'm trying to think who was the other one. I've closed down all my all my things now. And Dave Rennie with the three. What's the talk in and around Wales? What's your own thoughts? And does someone like Stephen Jones, as an outsider, get a chance? Who's been doing great stuff as back coach with Scarlets? So, what are your thoughts?
Stephen Jones, potentially, he's going to be in there sometime, and I'd love to see Stephen Jones, end up coaching Wales. To me, I think Pivac and Stephen Jones perhaps coming in as a part of his coaching team would be phenomenal. I'm not sure, WRU historically, once they've done the, been synonymous with bringing one team on, the WRU doesn't seem to sort of, they cool down towards them because they think they tend to be a bit, perhaps, typecast. Yeah. But Diane said, but not until 2023. So it looks as though he's talked himself out of this time anyway. Sorry, what was the other one?
Wayne?
No, he's there was Rennie, Dave Rennie as well, wasn't it?
That was a surprise name for me.
But although he seems to be quite happy with Glasgow and thinks he can, take them on. So whether he would still be in it.
Quality coach.
Yeah, and so Diane, as I said, maybe from 23 onwards. But for me at the moment, it's Pivot, And Chris Boyd, that's another name. And one of the outsiders again is Scott Robertson, Hurricanes, New Zealand.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
There's a lot of New Zealand coaches in Wales, and we do tend to sort of send them back to New Zealand. they sort of go and do really brilliant things with the All Blacks. So, so there's a few there. And considering that, I think Rennie himself came out, didn't he, this week and said, well, actually, the WRU have not even spoken to him. So that's quite interesting. The only person who's sort of thrown his hat into the ring at the moment is Wayne Pivot. So, don't know. And considering the WRU are going to announce who it's going to be this summer before, you sort of think so. We could have a total outsider.
Okay, moving on to say that again. Here we go. Dave Williams.
We could be poaching from Ireland. Alan Wynne-Jones.
St. Joe's going nowhere at the moment, not until at least after 2019. Alan Wynne-Jones recently retired. Do you think he'll go into club rugby? Actually, a good point raised by Dave Williams. Do you think he'll go into club rugby, or do you think he'll get a position on the new coaching staff of whoever takes over as the coach? That's a very, very good point. What do we think will happen with him? This is a side question.
But I think that's it, isn't it? You're going to have to. I think you have to learn your coaching. It's one thing being a brilliant player, but it's another thing actually being able to tell people how to be brilliant players, isn't it? You have to. It's like you have to go through the whole process of starting at the bottom with rugby when you're playing, but I also think you have to hone your talents in being able to manage people and coach people to be the player that you were. So I think I don't see, it's like any ex-international. You don't walk into. Stephen Jones has been there in the back room. He's never left the Scarlets. He's turning out to be a really super coach, and as I said, I'd be really excited to see him taking on Wales in the future, but not yet. I think you've got to. You need to.
Yeah, old Colin McConaughey there is trying to stir things up by saying Stuart Lancaster. Not only is he quite happy, Colin, let me tell you, at Leinster.
We'll talk about Ulster.
Not any of this Ulster-Leinster malarkey. He's very, very happy as our Stuart was at Leinster, and he's added a huge amount of value, and he's not going anywhere, even if we have to kidnap him ourselves and move him down to Gorey and keep him in our cellar. But there would be a slight irony, methinks, in Stuart Lancaster ending up as the Welsh coach and then turning England over to Twickenham. So,
I think we prefer New Zealanders. We have a sort of history with the Antipodes.
Yeah, absolutely.
New South Wales in Australia. We were out in New Zealand as well, but we seem to, gravitate towards the Southern Hemisphere. Although it would be nice to have a Welsh coach at some point.
I think there's a bit of a sway towards that now. Wanting. I saw Shane Williams and a number of people interested on a podcast the other day, and Shane, who obviously is pretty close to, I think he's actually Gatlin's love child himself. Nothing to do with the fact that he was brought into Japan, hadn't played international rugby for 2 years, from the whole Bodgate and all of that. Like Murphy's, I'm not bitter, folks, honestly. But he was actually, it was him who brought out the point about an outsider of being Stephen Jones. I think that, but this whole point he was making was about maybe we have a Welsh coach this time.
I don't think this time. I think if Diane is putting himself in the frame for 2020 after 2023, then I think that would be quite exciting. But he wants to
prove himself.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that would be brilliant to have him back. And then if Stephen Jones is there, in his team, then Stephen Jones did take the job on after him. You know,
absolutely. Okay, just a quick shout out there to good mate of mine, Tim Ward. Tim, I hope you're well. Great to see you. Thanks for supporting the show, buddy. If you have any questions, then let us know. But great to have you on board. Welsh players on the move. I'm just conscious of the time, but there's a lot on the move in and out over the next sort of season or so, and a lot out, to be fair. It goes back to a question from Con before. How is that really, going to affect the regions on, losing, the groundswell of the people?
We would have George Northbank.
Absolutely, yeah. As long as he can last, yeah. But like Cuthbert's
we got Tipperary coming. He's getting
the surprise team.
Yeah.
Will they be missed? Is I suppose is the point.
So they will be. It's the same, isn't it? When you've got icons moving out, there's the headlines, but sometimes it just lets other people stand up to the plate, isn't it? I think some of the players that are coming back, quite exciting. We've got Richard Hibbard. It's funny, I'm talking about the Dragons quite a bit. All these players coming back to Wales, but actually that augurs well for particularly the Dragons. I hope next year. So we've got big players going out, but we've also got players coming back, and I think that's how it is, isn't it? You've got that flow. They go out, but then they sort of they do a couple of years, and then they come back.
Yeah, interesting. You said. I think people like Rhys Webb is grossly underestimated at times, and after too long, which just considers how well he is thought of. Obviously, Dan Bigger joining the Saints. Yeah. So, but you're right, and like I say, I'm just reading on the side again about Eli Walker, one of the top performing wings in British and Irish rugby, forced to the Tigers at the age of 25, a dreadful back injury. So we wish Eli well. Saw him play once, and but I tell you who Scarlets will miss, and I'm glad he's coming back because it means he gets to play for Ireland in the second round. That was Ty Byrne.
Absolutely.
The turnover king of the Pro 14, the turnover king of the European Championships, of the European Champions Rugby. Phenomenal player. And yet he was delivering pizza for Leinster. Wasn't hitting it down into the academy. And sometimes you just move on. But there's got to be an absolute success who's just grown as part of that Scarlets Welsh team. And that big loss, I think, to Scarlets next year.
And fair play, Scarlets gave him that chance, didn't they? And all the best to him. He's been a great servant to the Scarlets, and hopefully, he can make a real difference to Ireland. And that's
absolutely
that's great. I shall swear and kick things.
Look, you're right. You raised a point, Will, that it's just an after all of the day. People come out, people come in, and you give new people a chance to shine and also to take it.
Yeah.
I want to finish on a real success story. The Welsh Deaf Rugby Champions. Tell us all about the Welsh Deaf Rugby team, because I've never heard of it before.
No, and I got to admit, it's not something that's been on my radar until the World Championships, and it was a really exciting. From Welsh person's point of view, what can be better than beating England in the final of the World Cup? Who wouldn't want to do that? And huge shout out to him. Absolutely fantastic. And it's put. I think it's like all sort of disabled sport. One of my, I came into being really interested in wheelchair rugby, thanks to Prince Harry. With the what should we call it? Games. Sorry,
Invictus Games.
Yeah, Invictus. And it's some of those, it's those things, isn't it? You sort of, I've heard about them, but until you actually start watching them, and then you realise, my God, it's sort of absolutely fantastic. And when they're competing on a level playing field with other people in the same boat as them, it's as good as any international. And it I've seen highlights of the game. I didn't see the whole game, but I watched highlights, and it was a fantastic game of rugby. It would have graced the best of international games, so it was super.
Well, there you go. It's a shout out for the team of Wales Deaf Rugby, world champions, and it takes you through to the site there. Read a little bit more about them. Really interesting. You know, we like to broaden ourselves a little bit. So a big shout out to the team there. Absolutely, yeah, and like you say, beating England as well. So absolutely phenomenal achievement there. Superb. Covered a lot. So we're now down to the usual. 3 blokes, a ball, and Bod. And finally, listen, I'm sure there's. Let me just take that link off. Hide that link. I'm sure there's a huge amount to chat about still on all things Welsh Rugby. And over the next 7 days, it'll be in bars and homes and clubs and, you know, PMs to us all and stuff like that. It's a quick canter through. I have to really, really thank Rhiannon Noel Phillips, our first ever female panellist, our first Welsh panellist on, for taking the time and effort to come on tonight. She's added a lot of value to and crack and banter to the panellist messenger group we have, and really appreciate your time, Bob, honestly. But the background that you set. In putting where Welsh Rugby was before the regions in the last 15 years. I think it's one of the things that we need to do is to get people to understand rugby in the British and Irish Isles from grassroots all the way through. So thank you for taking the time for that. And your thoughts have made me rethink some different things about it. And that's what 3 blokes, a ball and bod is all about. Just, you know, stretching our minds to slightly different opinions that we might have had, both about British and Irish rugby and also about world rugby as well. So, Rhiannon, absolute pleasure. We'll have you back on again soon. But we'll have people, I think, for the next 7 days now on some of the things you've said, debating, deciding, and even deciphering our thoughts. You know, if anybody's going to be watching this after the live show tonight, put your comments in. Please go to the Facebook page, 3 blokes, a ball and bod, and like and follow. Please remember to follow so you'll get all the latest updates as well. And we'll be very grateful for that. Again. We look forward to next Thursday, where we'll be looking at the 3rd part of British and Irish Isles nations rugby, when we're looking at all things English rugby. We've got a trio of English panellists, including Rob Russell, who will be on the lead on that, Simon Talbot, myself, and of course we're hoping to have Mr. Eddie Jones joining us. No, not the Eddie Jones, but some bloke I met down the Chipper. But he apparently is equally successful this year at rugby as the England coaches. That's just a joke, people. Don't get bent out of shape. But all seriously, we look forward to next Thursday, 2100 hours, 9 p.m. British summer time, for looking at all things rugby. However, and in fact, on that, we'll be looking at, including in that, ring fencing the Aviva Premiership, the changes there, salary capping and what's been going on the last few years, player management welfare, and and the current demise of the national team, and has that player or lack of player management welfare, which we do so well in Ireland, i.e. the amount of minutes played and the expectations, caused the current demising and the national team. So all those things with the panellists, with Rob and Simon, myself, and one other next week. But before that, everybody knows that Thursday, at 9 o'clock, as always, 3 blokes upon the ball, a ball and bod even. But next Monday, we're going to do a 3 blokes, a ball and bod special. Again, 2100 hours, 9 p.m. British summertime. We'll be looking at Ulster Rugby. Now, there's been an awful lot going on the last couple of months with the unfortunate incident which led to the court case, 2 players being sacked and moving on, a slump in the team. Not as bad as people are saying. The glorious bod, and we're not talking about my bod, I'm talking about bod getting, referring to Ulster Rugby as a basket case, although I personally think it was taken out of context. But so we're going to do a special on Monday night, 8 p.m., as you were at 9 p.m., and we'll be sticking a link out on that probably on Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock at the same time. And we'll be joined by, looking at all things Ulster Rugby, we'll be joined by Ben Slater, an Ulsterman living in Scotland, Christian Ross, a Geordie, who until last week was in Ulster and now in the UK, and the Reverend Colin McConaughey, currently the rector of Catholic Cross in County Monaghan, but most definitely 100% Ulsterman, as you will find out. To promises to be actually a fiery debate, I can pretty much guarantee you. So until next Monday, have a safe weekend. Thank you to Rhiannon. Thank you to everybody who has watched, commented and supported. God of Mila Mahagot, Schlangerfall.